fashion isn't free. Someone somewhere is paying. When I first read that quote by Lucy Siegel, it really struck a chord with me. I'm a third-year fashion design student here at BSU Uni, and I'm curious. I'm curious about where my clothes have come from and where they're going. And I'm here to tell you where you should be too. Now, you might think the fashion industry doesn't apply to you. But if you care about equality, if you care about our environment, if you care about women's empowerment or children's rights, fashion does apply to you. I want you to take a second, look down at your clothing, pick one garment in particular. Do you know who made this garment? Do you know how much they were paid? Or perhaps what country this item was made in? Fashion can be extremely polluting and is actually considered to be one of the most polluting industries in the world today. I'm going to run you through how it works. So it basically stemmed after the Industrial Revolution with this ideal of modernity, that everything needs to be new, and everything that's come before it is obsolete. Therefore, this is why trends are so popular. They come and they go. So designers wind the clock back 50 years, and they used to produce two major collections, spring, summer, and autumn, winter. Then, major retailers would translate this clothing and produce more watered-down versions that would hit retail stores every few months. However, now, it works on 50 cycles per year. That's an average of about 2 weeks that turnover occurs in now. So it goes from catwalk to store within 2 weeks. How does that happen? It's something we really need to begin to question. So I'm going to break down the cradle-to-grave design system on which the fast fashion industry works today. Now we start at the raw material extraction, which is the fiber extraction. So you've got your natural and your synthetic fibers. Your natural ones are based on plants and animals, so that being wool, linen, silk, and your synthetics are based off of crude oil. The synthetics are also they constitute the major part of the market today. Bear in mind, they can take up to 200 years to decompose. Some pretty nasty stuff. And then regarding cotton, for example, it is a natural fiber, however, we farm it so intensely that it is non-organic, therefore really dependent on pesticides, which degrades the soil and in turn our ecosystems. And it is also an extremely thirsty plant. So for every cotton t-shirt, it demands 2,700 litres of water. That is equivalent to 3 years of one person's drinking water. Now, I'm pretty sure that we all know which we could do without. The next stage of the process involves converting that fiber into an actual cloth. So how does this happen? It is very labor intensive, and it also uses very heavy use of machinery. As you can see here, the dyes within the process can impact our waterways by leaching the dyes involved in that process into our waterways, polluting our oceans, and then further damaging our marine life. And for the garment workers, it can really bring on severe health impacts, such as even increasing the risks of cancer. So this fiber is spun and then woven or knitted, further dyed, bringing us to the next stage, that is the production of the fabric, right? So once the fabric has been produced, it comes to us fashion designers. So we're told we have this plethora of fabric available to us of different colours, weights, textures that we can use in any way that we desire. But truthfully, it's something we really need to begin to consider. Did you know that at this stage, actually 80% of the carbon footprint of that item can be decided? So truthfully, we make a lot of these decisions that will in turn impact in the end. For example, myself, as a future fashion designer and now in my third year, I'm designing a capsule collection, and it's really important to me to make it as transparent as possible. So I try to implement things such as the next few I'm going to speak to you about. Initially, we can consider our fibers. So this is a chart developed by Patagonia, where they run through class 1 to 4, for example, and they can really display the different kind of stages of impact. So class 1 and 2 would be less impactful, whereas 3 and 4 more so. So really relying on class 1 more so than the others would help level out that impact. Further, considering things such as zero waste pattern cutting, where the designer uses the whole width of the fabric rather than any offcuts landing on the studio floor and going to waste before the product is actually even produced. Or even having the cradle-to-cradle design implemented at the very core of our design process. So this is, as you can tell, it has similar stages to the design process I'm telling you now that the mass system works on. So the cradle-to-cradle means that we will consider the circular element of these designs, so it won't go to waste at the end of it. It will either be fully biodegradable or infinitely recyclable. Next, we've got garment manufacturing. Now, this can be extremely impactful socially. Garment workers are expected to produce a lot of clothing within a very short time period. An average garment worker would be expected to sit at their positions, performing a monotonous task such as sewing hems all day for an average of a 14-hour shift. Sometimes, now I'm speaking kind of in worst cases, the lack of governing body would mean that there are little to no minimum wage rules or legislations in place, such as in Ethiopia, they only actually receive the average of $24 a month. Child labour can also be extremely prominent. This is the Boni. She moved to the city of Dhaka in Bangladesh for work. The Rana Plaza collapse is one of the biggest accidents of the industry up until now. So it occurred on the 24th of April 2013. Workers had pointed out to authorities this massive crack in the side of the building due to the poor infrastructure, and they were actually ordered to remain silent with their heads down, working as usual. 1,134 people died, and more than 2,500 further were injured. However, returning to our mass production scale system, once those garments have been produced, they're packaged up and transported across the globe. This is Zara's supply chain back in 2012, which just displays kind of the impact, the vast kind of reach it has globally. So you can actually kind of start to picture, you know, all the other major retailers, you know, those really can add up. Then you've got the retail. And this is why this stage is so important. It's the first one we actually see. Before, I used to shop in major retailers, and now I feel like it's something that I never used to question. I don't know about you guys. So it's just really important to begin to understand how it is that those garments have come into store, because they're dressing a mannequin and they catch your eye and draw you into the shop. Did you know that our appetites for fashion are so ingrained in us that, according to the Telegraph, it is quoted Britain's unofficial national sport, that is the habit of shopping. Also, we produce 150 billion items of clothing worldwide, from a fact given in 2016. And that doubled in just 4 years. Next, we need to also consider our impact when it comes to, you know, taking the clothing home. What happens to it? It continues to increment in its carbon footprint. So during our use, say, washing, drying, ironing of that product, within the washing alone, synthetics release microfibers. Take your garments like your tights or your new polyester blazer. If you put those in an average wash of 5 kilograms, 6 million microfibers get released into the environment during that process. Now, why is this problematic? Well, it's based off of crude oil, similarly to plastic, and it runs its way in through our food chains, and then we end up eating it. So we do consume a lot of this plastic. Then it comes to disposal. When you are done with the item, where does it go? It most likely ends up in landfill. Every year, 300,000 tons of used clothing ends up in landfill in the UK alone. That amounts to around £140 million worth. So it's really something to consider. I think it's something I never used to consider quite personally. And everyone's on a different journey. And my way of dealing with this has been by boycotting. Truthfully, the fashion system is something that is at its core unsustainable for both the planet and the people involved in its supply system. I'm not asking you to boycott. I think everybody goes about it in their own way. One way that I really found helped me kind of gain this idea of transparency and ensure that workers have a more fair wage is by joining the fashion revolution. So they ask of you to show your label and then share on social media, share hashtag who made my clothes, and demand answers. So I think it's extremely important that we begin to realize that our money is like casting a vote. We're saying to the provider, we back what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're giving us. So as long as we're still a part of the system, we're complicit in what's still happening. So fashion revolution is starting to make changes, and within the supply chain, people are starting to give answers. Major retailers want to let consumers know what's occurring. And it's great, I think, to also be able to see what it is that workers do and what environments they're working in. The next thing you can look at is the labels, not the ones at the top with the branding, but the labels that actually show you what the fibre content is and where they were made. So you can begin to question the quality of that fabric, how long it will last, what it is that you intend the end use to be for. So more likely if you're going to use an outerwear jacket, you won't want that to be made out of silk, you know what I mean? So it's just really considering what it is the end use of that product is going to be. And again, changing our consumer habits. Ursula de Castro from Fashion Revolution quotes, "The most sustainable garment that you have is already in your wardrobe." So really, we need to stop buying as much as we are. It doesn't matter who you buy it from at the end of the day. Even if it is a fast fashion brand, it is what you buy and how you treat it, how long you keep it for. So I really encourage you to stop buying or buy as least as possible and begin to borrow, swap, thrift. And I know that this is all old news, but it really shouldn't be overlooked. Further, question, read, question your friends, question your family members. Make sure that it is really part of your conversation in daily life. I encourage you to get involved and stay curious. Thank you.